Welcome to the Success Pick and Mix podcast. I'm your host, Nicky Raby, a professional pick and mixer. I'm a personal brand coach, a speaker, an actor, a creator, and a podcaster. I'm on a mission to help you find and create your version of success. Your pick and mix of life and business on your terms. A blend that complements your personality, your goals, and your circumstances. Since 2018, I've been sharing interviews and mini episodes to help you unlock your next step, to make it real and make it happen. Round here, we dream big. We go for the ideal version. We talk about money and make moves our future selves would be proud of. This podcast is free and available for you whenever you need it. So do rate, review, and subscribe for new episodes. If you want to go deeper with my support, check out my freebies house and unlock the rooms you choose. nickyraby.com/freebies house. I also have workshops, programs, and one-on-one bespoke offerings. For prices and availability, go to nickyraby.com. Thank you, as always, for spending some time with me and my guests. Now, on to today's episode. In today's episode, I'm talking to Caro Gomez, who is a Latin American textile designer, originally from El Salvador. She lives in London with her husband and her 2 children, and she's recently launched her fashion brand, which carries her roots with her throughout her fashion journey, and her work is heavily inspired by the colours, patterns, and flair of the Latin American lifestyle. Please go and check out her Instagram. It's beautiful. I love the colours. I can almost feel that heat on my back, and that's saying a lot for a pale ginger person. In this episode, we talk about following your dream and really following those signs that pop up to say hello. It can be really difficult, and it comes up a lot with my clients, that sense of permission of, can I really go for this? Or shouldn't I have figured it out by this point in time? And the truth is, you can start whatever it is that you want to do at any time of life, and you just simply have to decide. I know that you'll find her story really inspiring. So whether or not you're in fashion, it really doesn't matter. There'll be so many nuggets that you can take from this. Please check the description box as always, and rate and review and subscribe and all of that good stuff, and join in the conversation over on Instagram. Tag me, let me know where you're listening, add it to your stories, and also you can connect with us both there or on the podcast show notes page, which is nickyraby.com/podcast. It's a goodie. Enjoy. Caro, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being a guest.
Oh, hi. Thanks so much for having me.
You're so welcome. Cool. Please tell us about your business and what you do and all its multicolored, beautiful gloriousness.
Oh, thanks for that. I take the color thing very much at heart, so I'm glad that you picked up on that. So I'm a textile and fashion designer. I've only been calling that for the past year, because before that I was more into interiors and, well, I still do a bit of social media as well, and art direction. But it's been an interesting journey because growing up, I always wanted to be a fashion designer and be around clothes and textiles because, I don't know, I guess it comes from my parents. Well, my mom and my grandfather, who was a tailor, and my mom, who's always made her clothes and used to have these amazing dresses in her wardrobe that I'd go through and then like put on and play with. And she just, she would design them and then either make them herself or have someone help her out doing. So I think that's where that comes from. But, at age 17, I was like, okay, I need to go and do this. And there wasn't really an opportunity in El Salvador, where I'm from, to do this because, it just wasn't an industry there. So I decided to go to Milan because I thought, well, that's the place to do it. So I'll just go there. And it was really hard, actually. I mean, I didn't speak the language, but I went there to learn Italian first. And then I ended up staying in Milan for a year, but I hated it. It kind of, that bubble of fashion that I built up in my head just burst very quickly, because there was a lot of, sort of fake stuff that happens. And I'm sure it's not just fashion, it happens everywhere, but very much so the way kind of we see it in TV and that sort of thing, that was happening.
The darling, sweetie, all that.
Yes. Oh God. Yeah. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I don't think I can be part of this. It's just not me. And I just couldn't integrate as well. It was a very closed, the Italian community was very close, sort of within Italian people. And I just felt like I couldn't sort of be part of that community. And so then I thought, well, where else can I go? And then, I already speak English, so I'll go to London.
I love this boldness of like your late teens. Like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. But also I'm thinking like, when I look back, like at the time of being 17, 18, 19, I was so sure of myself. Like I knew what I wanted. Like I wasn't taking no for an answer. But then on the other hand, when I look back, I'm just like, I didn't know who I was at all.
It's a mixed bag of things, really, because same. I knew exactly what I wanted. I went and outdid it. I remember doing all the research online. We did have some online stuff back then. And I did all the research, how much it would cost, where I would live, all that. And I presented it to my parents and said, look, this is the plan,
This is what we're doing.
Yeah, by the way. And they've always been really supportive of my sort of things and dreams and random stuff that I do. But I was very much like that. But then, I came to London. I didn't have a portfolio of work because I'd never done art in school, because I thought, well, I love doing this kind of stuff, but I'm definitely not the creative type. That's what I used to tell myself.
Oh, isn't it funny what we tell ourselves and convince ourselves of? I was talking to a lady the other day, and she'd made up this story about the type of person that she was and how she operated. And I think it was something like, I'm just a really disorganized person. And then she had to check in and she was like, actually, I'm 42, 43. I'm not disorganized. I'm pretty on it. I'm running my household. I'm running my business. I'm doing this.
Yeah, exactly. There's obviously something down the line goes in and you believe it. And I was so sure, to the point where in school, when I did A levels, I studied like physics, economics. I stayed as far away as possible from the art department, but I wanted to be in it. I loved like being around it, and I just couldn't sort of say to myself, that's because you are really creative.
Totally. Permission is such a big thing, isn't it? Like, can I actually say that this is what I want and be bold? And I found that with the theatre route, like nobody in my school was going, I want to be on stage, or I want to have a personal brand. Like most people were saying, I want to be an estate agent. So, which there's nothing wrong with it. We all need estate agents, but also, like, it just wasn't my thing at all. So, so then you had your daughter, and how did you start to kind of know it was the right time to build your own brand?
Well, I think, so this happened. So I finished, so I went to St. Martin's to do my foundation, and then I wanted to do women's wear there, but then I wasn't accepted to the program, which was like a huge blow and kind of like the nail in the coffin where, no, you're not meant to be doing this, basically. That's how I took it. And so I was then like, fine, I won't, and then I went to textile design, which I loved. And it was a brilliant way for me to explore my creativity. And then after I finished my degree, I went on to do interior. So I spent a lot of time in an interior e-commerce sort of side of things. So I got a lot of digital background, which is great. And then after that, a year ago, I was like, something's not working. I have 2 kids now. They're sort of growing. One is 3, the other one is 11. So I'm getting out of that toddler life a bit. And I just knew something wasn't quite working. I mean, I still kept going back to sort of fashion. I had a children's wear brand for a while, but didn't quite give it my all because it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. And so I was like, fine, I'm going to do a vision board, and whatever happens, I'll act on it. Like, I kind of said that to myself. And I had a few magazines lying around. They weren't even fashion magazines. And I did this vision board. And when I stood back, and I was just like, oh my God, this is all to do with fashion. Like, what are you doing with your life? And I mean, it was really emotional, and I started crying, and I was like,
quite
okay.
It's a stark experience, isn't it? When you actually go, ooh, okay, that's what it is, and that's what it's going to be. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'd run away from it for such a long time. And at the end, I ended up in that place again. So I was like, okay, well, fine. I said I was going to do whatever happened in that vision board. That's the next step. So I was like, okay, so let's do this. Let's kind of get this sorted and do something about it. Because otherwise I'll be 60 and still kind of thinking, oh no, that's still there.
Can I just go back on how did that show up that you just knew something wasn't right? Because I think sometimes we can kind of, I've done it myself. I can convince myself that things are hunky-dory, and I hear it from my clients sometimes where we do the internal success checklist in our heads where we're like, well, I've got somebody that loves me, and I've got children, and I've done that, and, I should just be grateful for what I want. How did you, know that there was some disease in that there was something more, but also how did you get beyond those sort of blocks of going, okay, I'm going to get to the point of vision boarding?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that for me, it was showing up as being basically unhappy, not in my sort of personal life, because I think that has always been, kind of a good support that I have with my husband and the kids and my family, even though they're far away. But I was just, I don't know, I was unsatisfied, and I kept having these dreams of me wearing these amazing clothes and talking to people about my journey. And I've always been super passionate about supporting the Latin community, whether I've traveled back to El Salvador and gone and do things there, or just I'm very in tune with my Latin side, it's probably because I'm far away that I'm kind of like holding on to it, and teach my kids Spanish and all that.
And you're dancing on Instagram as well. I can see those Latin hips.
Yeah, exactly. And I felt that I wasn't giving it space, So I think that's when more or less the dancing started as well, because I was like, I need to do something to give this like room to breathe. And it didn't, it came out to be fashion. It came out that it was clothes, but it could have well been anything else, so long as I gave that side of me a space to be heard. And I think that was the biggest thing. Like, I wasn't being heard, I wasn't being sort of seen, or I felt that I wasn't being seen and heard, because I thought I have so many things to say and so many things I'd love to share, about growth and life and, integrating into a new society when maybe you don't know the culture at all, or coming from a different country and being of diverse background. And I felt like I wasn't saying those things, and it's like, well, how do I give this some space, some voice, because otherwise I'm drowning inside, it was very, it was an introspect journey, and with the dreams, and it was just kind of a combination of things. And then I was like, okay, this needs to come out, it was kind of like, it was just bottling up, and then it had to come out somewhere.
I know that feeling so well, and there gets to a point where it just kind of, it almost spills out everywhere, and that's when you have the emotional reaction to it, because you see it for what it is and you're like, oh, yeah, you know, and sometimes there's different phases of like, I'm not ready to face this yet, or this means I've actually got to do something about it, or you then kind of creep back into who am I to do this, or can I do this, and all our, you know, our ego comes out to play, singing and dancing with a big old drum, going, right, you thought you'd do this, did you? You know, it's like,
that's exactly right. And I think obviously because it wants to keep you safe, you know, quote unquote, it wants to keep you in the comfort zone, you know, it wants to keep you watching Netflix and eating your favorite food, you know, because that
and the two go hand in hand when you're in that place. Like, I'll just sit here, and I'm not, you know, Tony Robbins is a great, you know, one of the best in the world of the self-help gurus, and like he always talks about moving your body and getting in touch with your body. And I always know, like, when I'm hiding from something, or like when I'm making a really good lunch, when I know I've got an important like piece of work to do, I'm like, okay, so I'm in fear here, why am I doing this? Ooh, but the lunch looks great.
Yes, I mean, it's true. Like, we do all sorts of things to stop ourselves from moving forward. Yes. You know, because it's I mean, you know, we don't have tigers and lions behind us now, but that's kind of your brain reacting and going, oh God, that's a tiger lion situation. Let's just stay here and just not do anything. And I was doing that, you know, loads. I mean, ask me any pop culture question, I will probably know the answer, because I was just binging on all this stuff, you know, and not being mindful about what I chose to watch or to hear or to listen to, you know. And so, so I think all this stuff, there was a point, you know, where it was just too much. And I was listening to Oprah's masterclass the other day, to her story. I mean, it's so amazing.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I was bawling at the end of it.
Me too.
But, you know, she talks about like whispers, right? And she says, you know, through your life, you will have sort of indications, like signs or like whispers of things that, you know, that your soul wants to sort of go for. And they become louder and louder if you don't listen, you know. Yeah. And I think I was at a point where it was just very loud and I couldn't ignore it anymore. And I was very successfully ignoring it for 10 years. So, you know.
Totally. So, and we can convince ourselves, we can build the whole picture to support that vision of, you know, well, now I've got kids, or it's probably not going to work, or I'm going to get too busy. And we can just put all sorts of things in the way. And I really resonated with that, what Oprah said about whispers as well, because often it's the whispers pop up when you know you have to step outside your comfort zone or do something differently. Like, there's been something like a project that I've been really working on at the moment, and there's been interest, but then it hasn't quite happened, and then something else. And I had this whisper the other morning of, okay, so what you've previously been doing isn't working anymore. What are you going to do now? And I was like, okay, I'm going to watch Netflix and make a nice lunch. But it was that moment of, I need to go this way and mix it up. But that's the courage piece that sort of comes out to play. So I guess once you had the vision board, how did you begin to bring it to life? What did that look like? So the question is, what has to happen for this to materialize, you know? And that's kind of like, that's when it gets really scary as well, because you're like, okay, great, I have this amazing, you know, visual thing which I put on my wall, and then it's like, okay, what next? I mean, I hadn't designed or picked up a pen for designing clothes or textiles really in since I graduated. I think, you know, I was, it was very much locked away, far away. But I think the first thing that was happening there, or that I had to sort of, it was stretch my legs, you know, and kind of go, okay, let's go back to kind of uni days, you know, what inspires me, and rip out images and words and things that say something to me. And of course, you know,
me being, from Latin America, it was a lot about movement. It was a lot about color. And I was just drawing and doodling, which, before I'd been, I'd always doodle, but I always thought, doodling is not like an artistic thing. It's something that, everyone does. And like, that's just, but actually it's so powerful. I mean, it's the thing, it takes you out of your head and you just start, just creating. I mean, and that's why I think everyone is an artist, because everyone can pick up a pen and doodle.
Totally. I see it in my coaching sessions or my speaking events sometimes where, like I did one the other day for people who are assistants and kind of the big skeletal bones of the industry, and a lot of them were perfectionists by that was sort of their default setting. And a couple of the questions that I asked them, they wanted to write down the answer perfectly, and so I had to say, you're not going to get it perfectly the first time, maybe, write down whatever is in your mind. And you could see them kind of squirming in their chairs like, no, but I want to do this, like, perfect. And you can't. Sometimes. So what happened next after the doodling?
So I decided to go bigger because that sometimes helps. And so I took out
go hard or go home.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, pretty much. If I want to be heard, right? And I took out a bed sheet from my cupboard, like a white one that I had there that that was like, I won't use this anymore. And so I started doodling on that. And I then made a dress out of it.
All in like a quick time, like in the space of an afternoon.
Yeah, it was in about 3 days. So like one day I doodled, the second day like I was letting it dry and I was thinking of what shape the dress was going to be. Third day I cut it and I sewed it together. And I'm not like particularly amazing at sewing, but I can do like basic things.
God, doesn't it happen quick when you get in that zone of like, okay, we're doing it.
Yeah. This is happening.
This is happening.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it was a very simple shape, and a few stitchings on the side and a few stitchings on the top. I mean, I didn't even like do hems or anything. It was just really like raw and rough, And I also fight with the perfectionist syndrome a lot. And I mean, I'm better at managing that, a bit better now. But, every time I was like finishing a doodle or like a stitch or anything, I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, in my head, there was a side of me that was, this is terrible. I mean, this is awful. Who would look at this? I mean, I said the most horrible things to myself.
Oh my goodness, we would never do that to our child. Like sometimes Oscar will bring home these art, as he calls it, my art, and you look at it and of course he's 3, I'm not critiquing it and going, well, I'm not sure about the form of that person, or that doesn't really look like mummy, but God, I would never say that is terrible, that is awful, like you just would never do that.
Exactly. And so I think that's where the learning comes, like still that voice obviously creeps up and I think it will forever, but it's about saying, oh, hi, there you are.
Again. How can I
Again.
help? Yes.
But don't worry, I've got this. But thanks.
Thanks for stopping by. Now on your way, my friend.
Yeah. It's like, they're still on the bus, but I'm driving kind of thing,
Oh, gosh. And that shift in yourself of actually deciding that you can make that decision of who leads the way. That's been really key for me, because sometimes, especially when we're in the everything I'm doing is terrible, nothing's working out, we just find more evidence of that. We find more things that are going wrong and we back up our own story. But I guess so you started building that, and then at what stage did you sort of know, okay, this is going to be a thing, I'm going to go all in? I think sometimes we can all do that. Well, when January the 1st comes round, or when I reach my scary age, or when something awful happens in my life and I reflect everything, that's when I'll start. But like, you had the wheels in motion then. How did you know what it was going to be?
Well, I guess I didn't know, but what I did know was that I guess curiosity. I want to know how amazing I can be, and what, how far I can get for myself, and for my family, and, for my kind of purpose in life, which is, this thing of giving voice to those that maybe don't feel like they have it, or feel like they're not good enough, or feel like they're not creative enough, or feel like, well, my English is not perfect enough, Yeah. And so I work now, I've working with Latin American women here in London to do that, because I think that's the main driver for me. And I work with this amazing lady. She's from Ecuador, and she doesn't speak the language, but she's here, and her partner has just been deported back to Ecuador because they're married, but for some, immigration is very complicated, and there's always issues and things with that. And he's been sent back basically, and they've been away or apart from each other for 2 years, and they've tried, so many things, obviously, like providing all the documents and things, and it's like no one is listening. And even, she told me the story. They went to the Home Office, and they were meant to have a translator, and they didn't give them one, and so they really didn't understand what was going on. And all of a sudden it was just like, here, take your bag, you go, we're keeping him. And that was the last time they saw each other.
God,
and
how traumatic.
I know. I mean, and that happens all the time. I mean, that's one particular story that I've heard now. But for me, it's kind of like, well, what can we do about that? And she works like round the clock to send money back home and to sort of support herself here, and not earning a living wage, and working ridiculous hours. And I'm like, how do we get you out of that? Because that's not fair, and that's where my sort of heart lies, is in like, fairness and equality and diversity and all that. So yeah,
I'm craving so much of that. There's so many stories, and I feel like things are finally starting to shift a little bit, where more voices are being heard, different stories. But I've spoken about it on the podcast sometimes, is that, especially when I go up for acting work, it's just like the availability of stories is so limited. And, I had a chat the other week saying, like, I just don't know what we do with, like, women in their, like, late 30s. And I just, like, laughed, because I thought, because, like, I thought this was, like, an urban legend, that this didn't really happen. But it does. People say things like that. I would love to tap into what you mentioned about moving into, because I love that book as well, The Big Leap, moving into your zone of genius rather than just staying in your zone of excellence. Tell us about what that means for you, or if people haven't read the book, how they can make it work for them.
Yeah, so
we'll just rip off Gay Hendricks or all his tools, but it's a great book.
Yeah, and he, I did that book on Audible actually, because he's the one who narrates it, and his voice is really powerful as well. So if people want to do that, I really recommend the Audible version of it. Just because the messages are kind of more powerful, but. So being in your zone of excellence for me is kind of doing the things that I know I'm good at, and that are kind of like, like for instance, when I was doing social media and digital marketing and art direction, and, working with images and layouts and that kind of thing, it's lovely to do, but it doesn't feel like your heart doesn't jump a little bit, or your stomach doesn't get a bit fluttery. It's just stuff that you're good at doing, and it's relatively straightforward for you to do,
Almost like easy boxes to tick, aren't they? That you can kind of rattle it off, you can do it in your sleep. It's kind of no big deal, really.
Exactly.
No big deal in terms of it's not shaking your soul, but also, like, you can do it, it's easy, no worries at all.
Yeah, exactly. But if you have no bodily reactions to it, then you're probably not in your zone of genius. Yes. And that's where you want to be. I mean, that's where I love to be. And whenever, there is a moment when you're doing your craft, whether it is, a product or a service or acting, or where you just feel so complete, even though it might just be you and the thing that you're working on or creating or building. And your heart just feels like burst, like it's gonna burst or something for a second. It doesn't last forever. It's just,
it's like a crush almost, that feeling that, like, I'm sure that we used to spend so long as teenagers, like, waiting for somebody to phone, or is he gonna look at me, or like, is he standing in the lunch queue, oh my goodness, what's he gonna have, or all of this, that you kind of you can make all these stories about it.
Yeah, it's that feeling, and we know it because when you feel it, you'll know it, and you're like, oh yeah, that one. And then that happens for me when I'm with the fabric and it's a blank canvas, and I start to paint and I play some music. That's kind of my moment of genius. That's my zone of genius. And as much as I would love to just be in there, of course, there's other things that need to be doing. But if you get that a bit every day and you're in a state of flow, then your kind of, I don't know, your life happiness levels or something, they just change quite dramatically, even if it's just for 5 minutes,
Oh, that's so true. I was going to say, what do you do before that in order to get yourself into flow? Because I think sometimes, especially if we're tired or we have a lot on our plate, or people that need us or whatever, we can feel like we're operating a little bit. I feel like there's sometimes of operating from a bit of an empty cup. So I sort of know my own techniques to kind of go, right, this is the time, we've got to do it, because otherwise you go, I'll just sit down and read the newspaper for 5 minutes, and then it becomes something else.
So that for me is the dancing. That's where that comes in for me. So I know that if I'm feeling empty, or if I'm feeling moody, or if something isn't flowing, because sometimes, of course, life happens and things don't just kind of flow.
Yes.
and that's when I put on a song that I love, It could most likely it would be a Latin song. And then just dance to it. And that kind of releases that energy. The other thing I did last year, it was quite challenging, but if you really want to switch something up in your life, because you know what they say, right? You can't keep doing the same thing and expect a different result.
Yes, I know it well. Even though we want to just continue as we are doing the same thing and get a good, yes.
And so I read this book called The Miracle Morning.
Yes, I read it too.
And I was like, okay, wow, waking up in the morning at 6, when everyone's sleeping and doing all these things, that's really like tricky. Because of course, I don't naturally wake up that early. So, but anyway, so I said to myself, okay, I will try this, for 90 days. But I didn't think 90 days first. I thought 21 days.
Yeah.
I gave myself 21 days. Exactly. Because then I said, if I get to 21 days and I'm still like feeling or seeing something positive, I will go on for another bit, and like that,
And so that's such a good thing to do, actually, like breaking it down. Because sometimes if you're like, right, I'm changing my life forever, starting from now, like it's just too much. Like
it's too much. Yeah, it's not feasible. Yeah, it's not going to happen. So I did 21 days, and I had my calendar, and I was ticking out the days, which obviously we know the power of ticking out,
yes,
and how amazing that feels.
The sticker chart.
Yeah, exactly. And so I woke up and I went to the gym, and when I was walking to the gym, I'd listen to a podcast. Which is why I said, your mini episodes are great for that, because they're like little bits enough to walk to the gym. Did half an hour of movement. I mean, I wouldn't even call it like strenuous, oh my God, I'm dead exercise. And then came back and started the day, and it just made such a difference. And I went to bed at 10. That was the other thing.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And so what results did you get? What were the things that were just really noticeable?
So it was my concentration through the day. So I mean, I have a bad habit that, of course, I'm doing something and then something pops up and I get distracted and start doing something else. And then I pick up my phone and then I start doing something, and it's like 20 windows open and nothing is finished.
Yes. Oh, yes, I hear you. Yes, the creative mind takes over.
Yeah. And so my capacity for concentrating on the one task for at least 45 minutes, that improved really, like, clearly. Like, I was like, oh gosh, I hadn't picked up my phone in 45 minutes. That was a really clear sign. And then also my skin improved a lot.
Wow.
Which was really nice to see. I mean, that was obviously an unexpected one. And then also my sort of capacity to then go into a moment of flow, yes, I thought was just so much easier to access, and to say, even for this half an hour, I'm just going to put my textile and my paint and my music and that's it, and so for that moment of the day, I was just in my element, for half an hour.
And creating that space for it and honouring it, like, this is a real thing that I'm doing. Oh my goodness. Yeah. And also that changes the way you then talk about it, or how you invest in yourself, or the permission that you give yourself to ask for help, because it's not just something like, one day. It's like, no, this is happening, and this is moving toward. I remember starting the podcast where I had to start telling people that I had a podcast, even though it wasn't live yet, because you have to make it real first before you try and get people on board. So you're now at the stage where you've got a collection, and how does this feel, this new phase?
Oh my gosh, I'm giddy as a kid. Oh. It's really cool, to be honest. I mean, I've just, and I could feel myself creeping back into, wait, but the website, that needs to be like perfect, before I launch it. And oh my God, getting like all the products and all the photos and everything has to. And to be honest, I then went like, oh no, I'm not going to do that again. So I'm doing a soft launch for the 8th of March, which is to coincide with Women's Day.
Amazing.
International Women's Day. And so people will be able to see, read the blogs, because I've written a few blog posts from a while, really, that I've been sort of writing out kind of my journey, thoughts, learnings, tips, ideas and things. And then have a look at, kind of like coming soon. And even if it's not perfect, I'm still going to, like you were saying about your podcast. Yeah, I have a website and it's live, and you can go and have a nosy and sign up to Big Bush Energy.
Amazing. What a great title. I love it.
Yeah. It's all about women empowerment and being heard and being given a space to thrive and with passion, compassion, style and humor.
All of the things are very close to my heart. I have one final question for you, which is, where would you like to be in 5 years' time?
Oh, well, so I'd hopefully be in Liberties. That's my collection.
Yes. I can see it. I can see it all happening.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to go to Liberties and see my little rail with some of my pieces. I do all this stuff, it's hand painted, and so it's very unique. But I do see myself growing into a space where my patterns become really recognizable, and they're part of kind of like a bigger visual representation of the brand. Mm. So, who knows, interiors, stationery, collaborations with brands that I really like, admire and respect. So where the patterns and the colors and the distinctiveness of them becomes really, like a visual reminder of where I started, and where we're going, and working with. Well, I do this, but I want to do more of it where I work with schools where the majority of the population is of a diverse background, Latin American and the diaspora. And these kids, or teenage girls mostly, were struggling to integrate into, British society because they come from migrant families. And so English is not their first language. On top of that, hormonal changes that come with the age, and feeling like all they can do in this life is probably kind of take the jobs that their parents would have, which is generally cleaning jobs. And so I worked with LAWA, which is the Latin American Women's Association, to come to these schools and do workshops with them. So we did a textile painting workshop the other day, and we're going to exhibit it at the Tate Exchange in May to show these girls, like the possibilities are endless.
Oh God, and that thing of, I really make it an important part of my brand that you have to keep saying your story in the way that you might say it, so other people know that it's possible for them. Because when I went to drama school, for example, I thought that you had to be very well spoken and a real sort of traditional lovey who loved Shakespeare and all of that, and that wasn't my experience of acting, and that wasn't necessarily the kind of characters I wanted to play. And it took me a long time to get to that place of actually going, oh no, you can carve out your own career. And I think we'll see much more of that on the turn, where we're seeing different role models out there and playing a bigger game, which just fills my heart so much.
I mean, it's a great time, now to have our voices heard, no matter where you come from. And I think the biggest thing that I'd say, it's just believing that whatever you want to do is okay, and it's possible. It's no one's going to give you permission to do it. No. You have to give yourself permission.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's been like a really big learning lesson for me over the past year and a half. It's kind of like, show up for yourself, because no one else will.
Oh my goodness. And I think sometimes there's that weird thing that we don't allow us to show up for ourselves, because as women we're so in that sort of nurturing situation that we feel like if we do show up for ourselves, then we won't have as enough to give, or we'll be letting ourselves down in other areas. But do you know what, when I do show up for myself, and even that moment of like having enough time in the morning to blow dry my hair, like I show up differently in the world, because I feel like I've topped myself up and I'm operating at my highest level. So and it's such a small thing sometimes, like not going out with wet hair.
No, actually, you're right. And you know what? The other thing that I do once a week, which allows that space, is I get my hair washed at the hair salon.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, and it just makes you feel good. And I think that's the thing that, and, I've spoken about it a little bit on the podcast, but certainly with this baby number 2, I refuse just to be in survival mode, because that is the picture that is painted for new mums, that, you're just a complete shambles. And my goodness, I didn't have a sleeper the first time. Who knows if I will the first time, but I will the next time rather. But I do feel like I will give myself a bit more permission to look after myself and say what I need and make my needs known. And you've got to live the lesson, don't you, first, before you get the lesson. And you're like, oh, okay, I hear it. Oh my goodness, I've loved chatting, and I feel so inspired and uplifting, and I just love everything about what you're doing. If people want to come and find out more, where should they go? What should they do?
So online, I'm at carogomez.com. So that's carogomez.com. And then on Instagram, that's kind of the platform where I mostly hang out, and that's where you see me dancing, and you can join me. I've had people send me videos of them dancing, and it's really fun.
Amazing. I will put something together, because I realised actually when Beyonce did Glastonbury, she was, well, they didn't say at the time, but she was now pregnant, and now I'm at the point where I'm like, if Beyonce can do Glastonbury, what can I do?
Exactly. If she can do it, then, for sure we can as well. And on that, Caro Gomez _ London. So that's where you can find me. And, you know, I love hearing about people's sort of journeys of finding their inner goddesses. So yeah, anything like that, I love to hear, and it inspires me as well. So
amazing, yeah. amazing. Thank you so much. I've absolutely loved it. Amazing. Thank you.
Gracias.
Muchas gracias. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you haven't already, feel free to rate, review, and subscribe for all the brand new episodes. If you want to go deeper with my support, check out my freebies house and unlock the rooms you choose. nickyraby.com/freebies house. I also have workshops, programs, and one-on-one bespoke offerings. For prices, availability, or just to have a chat with me, go to nickyraby.com. Thank you, as always, for spending some time with me and my guests, and I'll see you next time.